Okay, we are waiting at Netflix to see how our signal is going to do. And I'm going to move out to the main street area and see if we're going to get people coming in here. I have a really important, we might do one more wrap up live. Peppy's tangled in the leash again. I know for those of you out there that have made those comments, just as a fact of life. Come on, baby. Let's go, pup. Come on. Okay. Hi, Johnny. Thanks for being in here. We had a little delay because we went to the law offices of um, Bill Dresser. And if you look, he's the one in the red sweater in some of my old videos. He's always calling the police on us. He's the one, his office is literally right on the other side of that building. That's the Bay 101 Club. But I am at the headquarters of Netflix because some of you may forget that Netflix is headquartered here in Los Gatos. So I want to know if you can hear me okay. Johnny has the sound. Johnny, can you guys hear me okay? Hi guys. Can you hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if the sound's okay? Okay, good. Because it's really noisy out here. I have Peppy wrapped in my leash here as usual, and there's a lot of traffic. So this is the headquarters of Netflix, and sometimes we forget that this Netflix started here in Los Gatos. And actually, when I moved here, one of my neighbors was in charge of streaming, and they moved him immediately to Germany. Hi, Lisa Van Cycle. Nice to see you. And Tulare County Cop Watch. Nice to see you in here. We're going to do a little talk about the day we all met too. But I wanted to come down here before the year ended and talk about some of the things that we've done this year and do a mea culpa for some of the things that I have done in the past. And let's see if we can, I'm just going to kind of show you what the Netflix headquarters looks like here. And one of the cases that I followed, it was the case involving Michael Lazarin. And I do have a video up that went up about that because I covered his First Amendment case. So Michael Lazarin is a father who he moved here to Silicon Valley a few years ago, back in the early 2000s, and he was in tech. I think he was in recruiting for tech. And he went to a bar and he met a woman by the name of Sheila Pott. And Sheila Pott lived in Los Gatos, had a family that was one of those reputable families, and they started dating, and then their relationship broke up, but he didn't know that she had gotten pregnant during their breakup, and she had told him that she was divorced. And so he didn't really think any more about it. And then when his daughter, Audrey, was about 5 months old, and this is all from memory and reading court files and everything else, but when she was about 5 years old, we I'm going to walk that way now. Okay. I have people here filming me from behind. They filmed me over at Bill Dresser's office. We got another door slam from an attorney in private judging today. We'll be posting a video about Bill Dresser is the attorney who is not paying his business taxes, who represented the wife of a former prosecutor, and who also has been in a lot of private judging cases, but he's been sued for being very abusive to some of his clients. So I came down here today because I want to tell the Michael Lazarin story. I think it's a really important story. When his daughter was about 5 years old, Michael Lazarin was told that it was his daughter. And he started, thank you very much, Lugger Lau. I really appreciate that. So when Michael was, I'm turning back this way. Okay, sorry. We do have two people helping me record, you guys. I'm going to drop Puppy's leash. So when Michael's daughter was about 5 months old, he started raising her, and he didn't know that his child's mother was not divorced. And so throughout most of the country, we have laws that children that are born in marriage are considered the child of the parents in the marriage. So even if the woman cheats on the husband, he is considered the father of that child because it's born in marriage, and the law says that that's good for society to have children have intact families. And so even when women cheat and have babies that are not their husband's babies, the laws favor the married father being the father of the child. So what happened in Audrey Potts' case, switch hands here, was that he tried to assert paternity because it was his child. But by then, she was 7 years old. And there are laws that say if you don't assert paternity by the time your child is 2 years old, then you might lose the right to be considered the legal father of the child. And so Michael found himself involved in a divorce case, the Potts divorce case, because they weren't divorced. Sheila Pott had a lot of money. She was a no-doc loan writer for Washington Mutual. Um, I've been told that she made so much money that she would have $50,000 checks just sitting around her house, not cashed, and the money would just go to waste. And she was a constant shopper and very materialistic, and in that role, working for Washington Mutual. And that was when the banking crisis happened. So that was before that, when that was bubbling up. So Michael Lazarin got dragged into this divorce case. He wasn't married to the woman. He gets dragged into the divorce case. He's just trying to parent his child. He's had a 7-year relationship with her. He loves her very, very much. And the courts decide that he's going to have no legal right to the child. And the Potts then spend that child's entire childhood fighting over her because Sheila Pott had a lot of money. So there was incentive for Larry Pott, who remarried to Lisa Pott, to fight for custody because that meant that they would get lucrative child support. There was a lot of DV in that case, and the little girl didn't have a very good childhood. The Potts were religious, didn't celebrate, their religion didn't celebrate traditional holidays as Michael Lazarin's did. So Audrey went from growing up celebrating Christmas and other holidays with Michael's family, and then to a family that didn't celebrate those things. I actually had a lot of sources who were attending the high school where the Potts also had other children. And Lisa Pott was considered particularly, eh, the best way to describe it would be like from the Cinderella movies. She was that kind of stepmother to Audrey. And there was an incident at Saratoga High School. This is after Michael has lost custody of Audrey. He by the way, hired, I believe it was Dennis or David Luca. He hired a number of attorneys. He sued a number of attorneys. He went bankrupt. He did all of that fighting for his daughter. And then the his daughter unlived herself after an event, after a school party where there was a lot of drinking, and it was deemed that there was some cyberbullying. It was really one of the first cyberbullying cases, and our district attorney Jeff Rosen saw that as an opportunity, and he thanks American Traveler, appreciate the comment. And so these young boys were prosecuted for cyberbullying. I think there was a girl involved too, but they were minors. And so their case went into juvenile court. And at the time, the boys were represented by Eric Geffen, who is now the assistant presiding judge of the courts. He also was the attorney for one of the women in the 49er case that I covered. And during the juvenile proceedings, Lisa and Larry Pott allegedly were taking photographs of the boys. They were juveniles and they were in juvenile dependency court. And the parents complained to Eric Geffen, and he didn't do anything about it. So, for those of you who follow my work, you know that in California, cameras are not allowed in courtrooms. And so the fact that they were pulling out their phone and taking photographs was a violation of the law. We all have to get media requests granted, and there would be no way a media request would be granted in a juvenile criminal case. It's not done. And Jeff Rosen decided to charge these boys criminally, and there was eventually a plea deal. And the plea deal, for those of you who understand plea deals, that's basically a conviction. And after the conviction, the um, the boys ended up. That's an admission, and so then there was a civil case that the Potts brought against the boys, and because all of the boys had parents who owned homes, their homeowners policies actually paid that. So most of us don't realize the connection between these lawsuits, but once you accept a plea deal, you're accepting fault and you're basically convicted of whatever it is you're accepting the plea deal on. And that then opens the doors for civil cases. Probably the best example that you might be familiar with is the O.J. Simpson case, even though he was exonerated in the criminal case, and that was very controversial. He was sued civilly, and the Nicole Brown Simpson's family ended up getting a lot of money out of that civil case. Well, in this case, the Potts got a lot of money, and it was for Audrey's death, and Audrey wasn't Larry Potts or Lisa Potts' biological child. Northern California Newswork, that is very much appreciated. We are really trying to monetize this and keep this going so that we can keep this reporting, and I really, really appreciate it. So um, that was how the money flowed around Michael's Lazarin's case. He lost custody, and then when Audrey died, he tried to assert his rights as her father, not because he wanted the money, but because he wanted the validation of being her father. And one of the things, and I have recorded up at this cemetery, I could literally do a documentary on Michael Lazarin's case. But one of the things that was the most horrific to me was the fact that Michael found out about his daughter unliving herself on Facebook when people started to post about it. Nobody bothered to call him, nobody bothered to tell him. He found out on Facebook. And when you think about it, we didn't even have Facebook until 2010. And so a lot of the good that has come from social media, from Netflix, from all of our modern technology, there's a bad side to it too. And we don't talk about that enough. So the other thing so what happened was Michael tried to have standing as Audrey's father because he wanted information. He wanted to be involved. Well, not only did he not get that standing, but during the criminal prosecution, he was subjected to discovery. He had huge expenses. He actually, I think, went bankrupt twice and maybe even a third time. And then eventually he wanted to start talking about it. And so he did a press release. And most of you probably don't know this, but you can actually pay to do a press release and get a permit. And he went down to City Hall in San Jose and got the permit. I actually attended the press conference, and he gave a speech that was very remarkable about why Audrey needed her father in her life, and that if he had been in her life, she might have survived what was going on at school with the boys and the cyberbullying. But she didn't have him. She didn't have him to talk to or to do anything. Bruce, yes, we are in Los Gatos, California, and we are standing in front of the Netflix sign because this is Netflix's headquarters here in Los Gatos. And we forget about that when we're talking about the Los Gatos police and the private judges and Phil Dresser slamming the door on us. You know, Netflix is right here, and they're not making movies about what is going on in our everyday lives. They've made I Care a Lot. I think they've picked up the rights to divorce court, but they're not doing anything to help educate everybody about what's going on in our courts. So Michael Lazarin asked me at one point if I thought he should come down because the Potts actually got a movie deal with Netflix. Thank you, Johnny. I didn't see what Moon Ruiz was saying, but I appreciate you moderating on that. So the Potts, Lisa Pott, Larry Pott, and Sheila Pott, all these people who were fighting for years over the money and over Audrey, and just not making it about the kid, but making it about the money and themselves and how everything appeared, they got Netflix to pick up a movie called Audrey and Daisy. And if you look at that movie, if you've ever seen it, everybody climbed on the bandwagon of that movie. Oh, this is what it's like. And these boys are bullying and blah, blah, blah. And this is such a danger. And Daisy, who was alive when the movie was made, unlived herself as well. And the Netflix movie was very controversial. And so Michael wanted to talk about that. And he wanted to come down here and protest. He was going to set up right here outside the Netflix headquarters and protest. And I said to him, I don't know that you should do that. I don't know that people will come with you. And I have always regretted telling somebody not to do that. Puppy's sniffing in the Netflix bushes. And whether it's one small voice and he would have been out here, maybe he would have gotten attention, or maybe he would have just been on video and it would have just been him talking about something that people didn't understand. But the reality is, I have always felt badly, and I've told Michael I felt badly about that because he didn't talk about it. And then what happened was the Potts filed a restraining order and a lawsuit against him to keep him from talking about it. So after all that litigation, going through their divorce, going through the criminal case, and never being able to claim that this child was his child, the child that he had, that he raised, that he loved, he was never able to claim that. And then when he tried to do that, the Potts sued him. And so he got for a change, a good lawyer who, and I have this on video and I'm going to probably post this tomorrow because I think it's one of the most important videos. I posted it in 2020, part of it, but I didn't post all of it. And because I used a certain word in the title at the time, there was a lot of shadow banning going on about that. And so what ended up happening was the Potts, who had dragged this poor man through all this litigation, their own divorce, because they were deceitful with each other, they were fighting, it was all about the money. The judges even knew that it was a very abusive situation. Judge Mary Arend, who just recently retired, even said that Sheila Pott was not a very good mom and that Audrey was living in an abusive situation. And none of that ever factored in to the criminal prosecution, which it certainly would have been important for them to talk about her mental state caused by her own mother and her non-biological father and stepmother. And nobody ever talked about that, but Michael did. He kept talking about it, and he wanted to talk about it out here by doing a protest. He then got sued, and he filed an anti-SLAPP on their lawsuit. And we covered that because that case worked its way up to the Court of Appeal in 2020, and Michael won. And it's a very important First Amendment case, and I'm going to post it. It's published, which means it can be cited. And it took him that long. And I asked him if he would do it again. And he said that he would, because it was what he could do for his daughter and for her legacy and for her name, and to try to educate people. So in 2026, I am going to spend some time working on that case. I do think it's an important story. I do think Netflix producing the movie Audrey and Daisy was very deceptive for what was really going on. I think the district attorney, Jeff Rosen, used that case to keep himself in office. And at the heart of all of it was a young child. And when we hear these judges and lawyers talking about working in the best interests of children, I want you to remember Audrey Pott's story. I want you to remember the Minors Council that I've reported on. That's in my community posts. I wrote a very long article about that this week. And we're going door to door on these attorneys that are involved in getting taxpayer money for Minors Council or in private judging. So I wanted to tell you all, you guys that come in for these live streams, I always appreciate it. But this is a very important First Amendment case, and it involved Netflix and the movie Audrey and Daisy, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So I wanted you to see what Netflix looks like. I want you to remember that Netflix's money has had huge influence on this community. They sometimes donate to things and they don't otherwise. One of the things when we have small businesses is that small businesses support the communities. So your local restaurants, your local bakeries, the little retail stores that print shirts and awards, and that whole thing is whoever said the whole Netflix realm is like Hollywood, guess what we call it? We call it Hollywood North. So that's really what this has become. You guys are watching this on YouTube. We're in the YouTube. Google is also here in Santa Clara County. Facebook is here. Netflix is here. And so these are the people that are our modern day publishers that are controlling the narrative of what we hear and see. And I really appreciate every one of you that come in to hear the little voices and the people like the Michael Lazarins, whose voice never made it into mainstream media reporting or into a Netflix movie, but those are important stories to tell. And so, as you're all dealing with your own issues this year, I do want to take a moment to talk about the mental health issues. I especially see that happening in connection to people who are charged with crimes, who are dealing with police, and especially those who are going through the family courts. And I do see far too many cases of children being stripped of the custody of one of their parents in a manner that is just fancy lawyering, often with taxpayer dollars, but it's the judges that are being incompetent, and we elect these judges and we are not talking about that enough. So in 2026 we're going to be talking about that. Also in 2026 we're going to be putting pressure on wrapping up our reporting on women SV, and we're going to be calling on people to do something about it in law enforcement, because the district attorney Jeff Rosen has given women SV a free pass because he allowed that nonprofit to lobby for him, which is not allowed under the federal tax code. And what that nonprofit did to so many people is worthy of our reporting. So we've been on that for 5 years. We're on the Los Gatos police, and we are on the connections to who the Los Gatos police have been protecting, because um, one of the very first things that ever happened in the Michael Lazarin case was that when Netflix was going to do the Audrey and Daisy movie, the Potts started the Audrey Pott Foundation. So that was a nonprofit, and it like Women SV didn't add up. And we later found out that Lisa Pott went on the board of a nonprofit known as Cassie. And you've heard me asking for that in records requests. Cassie is a nonprofit that is in all of our local schools, and that nonprofit is supposed to be dealing with the mental health issues of children. And I can tell you it has been a miserable failure, because none of these nonprofits are talking about what children are going through if their parents are involved in the courts for a protracted time. So we're going to keep showing you the relationship between this. We're going to keep banging on these attorneys' doors. We're going to find out if they're paying their taxes, if they're stealing from clients, and if they're harming kids. And if they are, we're going to put it right up here. And it is all of your support that helps us do that. So I want you to know what we're working on. I appreciate all of your support. You guys have gotten us to over 78,000 subscribers this year, and that is very exciting to me. I appreciate all of your support. When you come in here and you get a membership, or you send gifts and support or whatever, that helps us keep going. We don't have Netflix paying us to do this work, and so we're going to keep on reporting until everybody understands what's going on. There's a fire truck coming to this. The fire department here used to be located right next door, and I used to park there when I was going to come over to Netflix and do any recording, and they've kind of closed off that parking lot. So anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody again. And Johnny, can you get rid of weapon PV5 PJ? I don't know why people come in. I just want to say one thing for all you trolls. Do you really have nothing better to do with your time? I mean, Is that what you're doing? You're just coming in, you just wait for these live streams and you just want to trash talk? Or are you working for the lawyers that we're reporting on? Thanks again, Johnny, for moderating today, and a big shout out to you in Colorado, to NorCal News. Thank you very much for that gift earlier, and appreciate your work and support always, and everybody that's been in here. And let's get ready for a very busy 2026. And I'm not done. I've got one more live stream coming up before the end of the year. So thanks, everybody. Keep spreading the word. I do want to add that a couple of you put in comments something about somebody on YouTube by the name of Nick. What's his name? What is it? Nick Shirley. And apparently, I haven't seen his work, but a lot of people started comparing me, and so one of my camera people knew about it too. And it sounds like he's doing some good work, going and knocking on doors. And I want to remind everybody, but that's what journalism is about. We ask the questions, we knock on the doors. It's not stalking, it's not harassment. It has a legitimate purpose. It's legally defined as news gathering activity. And one thing that was really interesting I wanted to mention too is that when I went to my first investigative reporter and editor's training session, I took a master class on interviewing certain victims of certain crimes. And sitting next to me, this was in 2017 or 18 when the Me Too movement was really kind of getting out of control. And sitting next to me was a woman, and I asked her who she worked for, because everybody that was there was working for the New York Times or Washington Post, 60 Minutes. And this is where all the really big wheelhouse investigative reporters go. And the woman sitting next to me said that she was a script writer for Netflix. So she was going through investigative reporter training, and she was a script writer for Netflix. Apparently, she didn't have that training when the Audrey and Daisy movie came out. So we're going to keep talking about the First Amendment, what it looks like on the street, what it looks like in our courts, and we're going to keep pressing on our investigative projects. That's that nonprofit Women SV, the Los Gatos Police. We are not done. I did do one more records request for Los Gatos. I've gotten several calls to investigate police in different places, and I do hope to get, with more support and more time, we will eventually get lots of places and have some impact in our reporting. And we can only do that because of everybody here. And I just want to thank you all very much for a great 2025 and for all of your support.